Hi, everyone. I think it should have let you in automatically, hopefully. And get like a thumbs up or you can hear me in the chat. Whoops, I raised my own hand. Don't need to do that. That would be awesome. And as for the chat, if you have joined us previously, put your name and certification number in here and we'll get you a CU. This one should be about eh, half a credit because this is really just focusing on tips and tricks of Excel. So we're really looking at the nutrient management downloadable spreadsheet, which we've had a bunch of webinars on before. We had one 2 weeks back that I am planning on emailing out with this one once I get our wonderful PCMO to put it on YouTube. They do a great job. It'll be linked on the website, but I'm going to email all the planners with it. And so the last webinar we focused on was how to use the nutrient management downloadable spreadsheet, which is an enhancement feature that we have for the module. And it's really looking at taking what the module is not the best at, the p-index, putting in nutrients, and doing it in an Excel form that's downloadable to your computer. And then using the module for what it is good for, which is mapping and collecting that kind of data. And then this is going to follow up on that previous training in that we're just going to look at little things that you might not know about in Excel to make the process of writing plans exponentially easier, how to filter, how to hide columns, things that will absolutely make plan writing a breeze when it comes to using the nutrient management downloadable spreadsheet, which I'm going to keep saying in the hopes of actually getting it to stick for the NMDS. And today's main presenter is going to be Joe Tesaro, who built the spreadsheet. And he is also our go-to Excel wizard for things that probably should have known, but he is really good about knowing. So again, if you're just joining us, put your name and cert number in the chat. And that is about all I had for an introduction. So Joe, whenever you're ready to impart your wisdom upon us, you're ready for you.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining on a steamy Monday afternoon. I don't have a firm agenda really, or a very specific agenda. I really just wanted to take the opportunity to go through the NMDS with everybody and share some like really kind of basic Excel knowledge on how to make this thing work in a way that makes it really fast and efficient. But I also just wanted to leave a lot of time for everyone to ask questions. So by all means, don't wait until the end. Let's just kind of keep it loose and fire away questions as you have them. I'm going to try my best to keep an eye on the chat. But if I miss you, Steph and see Marie, you're
Yep.
on here. If you guys just give me a heads up that
I've
someone's
got
got a
the
question.
chat open, so I will butt in as needed.
Cool. All right. And to keep it even more exciting, besides for not having a firm agenda, I just asked Steph a couple minutes ago if she had a plan that would be a good one to look at as an example, and she sent me one, and I haven't looked at this plan at all yet. So we're really just going to keep it very, very loose and unstructured and see if we can all learn some stuff together as we go through this. So let's start. Let me share my screen. So we've had a couple intro, how to use the NMDS sessions already. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the basic structures of it. We have some documentation. I know some videos have been posted on DCR's website if you need to review that. But again, if you have questions, if this is your first time looking at this and you have questions, I'm happy to go back to basics. Just let us know and we can back up. But assuming everyone knows how to export and import the NMDS at this point, I went ahead and did that, and I got it emailed to me really, really fast. It's much faster than our reports currently, like if you were trying to get a balance sheet report. So that actually is going to be tip number one. Several times when balance sheets have failed, I've suggested to people just get the balance sheet off the nutrient management downloadable spreadsheet. I actually think it's an easier format to read and follow. So you have that option as well. Even on really large plans, the way that the NMDS was designed, we're looking at like 5 minutes max on the download, as opposed to a large plan balance sheet, which we have all suffered through, which could take upwards of 20 minutes. So it's just another option to get some reports out. So I went ahead and did that. And so I have the plan is exported, and we're locked right now. So that's the first thing I want to go over to make sure everyone understands. This is the spreadsheet. It got downloaded or emailed to me, and then I downloaded it to my computer and just opened it up. And this is my first time looking at this plan. The one thing to understand that is tripping up some people is really nothing specific to using the spreadsheet. It's just file management. And this is really similar for Nutman 3 users. Back in the day, you would have kind of a master copy of your plan after you went through all of the tedious work of entering all of your soils, crop rotations and whatnot. And usually at that point, I would keep that as my fail safe. So if I did something horrible in the plan and, applied a wrong manure rate and realized way, too far into the process that this was not going to work, I could just go back. It's kind of like your get out of jail free card. So what I've been doing when I use the NMDS is the file that gets downloaded initially, I've just actually been renaming this right off the get-go. You can rename it as much as you want, and tampering with it in that way. Oh, I've got it open. Hold on. Tampering it, with it in that way is not going to mess anything up in terms of the export import process. So you can feel free to create multiple copies. And I'm going to show you right now behind the scene. It's not very exciting, but what makes this unique spreadsheet able to get imported back into CAS is a GUID, or a global universal identification number. And so buried right in, like way in here, you don't ever need to access this, but just so you can see what I'm talking about. This number here in the spreadsheet is the GUID for this unique spreadsheet. It's just a randomly generated ID. And this is what CAS is looking for. So a lot of people have been confused on, oh, well, I renamed it and now it won't import. And that's not the reason it won't import. It's not importing because you canceled the process at some point and downloaded a new one. Each time you do it, you get a new ID. And if this does not match perfectly with what CAS is looking for, then it won't import. And the reason is obvious. We're trying to make sure that the data integrity is there and that we don't trip anything up in this process. So it's not the file name. So go ahead and name it whatever you want, if that's helpful for you. And then from here, if it's a large, complicated plan, and I know like I'm going to be doing some things, and sometimes you as everyone knows, when you're writing a plan, sometimes it's very cut and dry, and sometimes it's a complicated dairy farm, and you're not really sure where what all of the inputs are going to be. So then I might make a copy of this. I just go to the file, make a copy of it, and rename it, manure added or whatever. And that way, if you mess something up, you can always go back to your first one. So that's kind of tip number one, is understand the GUID and how that works, and know that you can create multiple copies of the same file, and it's not going to mess anything up. Now, I'll show you in a couple minutes. I'll save this for a little bit later. But what happens if you make a copy, you realize that, oh, some things maybe were good, some things were bad, and you want to delete all that? How can you then add that back to another copy of the same plan? I'll show you that in a minute, because I think that's really useful too. We've had to do that a couple times with troubleshooting people. But let's go ahead, and now that we understand file management a little bit and we've got this plan open, let's go ahead and make sure that everyone knows how to navigate through this, and then we'll go over some tips and tricks as I'm going through it. So the first thing I like to do is I like to get rid of all of the formulas are all hidden. And so there's really no reason to have this box open at all. So I'm actually just going to, if you go to view and uncheck formula bar, you can actually get a lot more visibility on your screen so that you can see more of the plan and less of the stuff that's not really important. And you can actually even change, as most people know, you can go ahead and change your ribbon. You can hide a lot of these buttons and you could open up even more of the screen. So that's handy to know. We've left all of that stuff open so that you can go ahead, even though it's mostly locked down, you can go ahead and change things around to a certain extent. So the first tab that opens up is your crop summary, and it's meant to be exactly that. So this is kind of like your big overview of everything that you've entered into CAS, and it should be spitting out correctly into the NMDS. There's a couple of things that we're still trying to nail down. Like, it would be nice if it didn't show zeros. Like if you didn't have a previous condition, it shouldn't really say zero there. But, for the most part, this is a pretty readable just summary. Everything on this tab is locked. So if you try to change anything, it's not going to allow you to do that because we want to make sure that the data all stays in place. The only tabs that are open for edits are the ones that are left white. So if it's got a color code to it, a gray or some other color, it's pretty much, you can just say, well, that's not something that I'm supposed to be entering data into. That comes pre-populated from your CAS information. The next summary tab is the soil test summary. And again, it's all locked down, but it's just a quick overview of all your soil test data. I guess this is the next tip I'll go over. Wherever you see any of these, and this is really basic, I'm sure most of you all know this, but whenever you see any of these arrows, that means you can filter things. So if you have a really large plan that was spilling over and you really needed to limit your view, that's one common complaint we have in CAS is when you go and look at a plan, we do have ways to filter. So if I'm trying to apply some nutrients, depending on the size of the plan, first of all, it's very slow sometimes to load, which is super frustrating. And then even if I expand to show 100 rows at a time, it's really tedious because it shows every single year, every single season in the plan. It's really tedious to get through all this and not lose track of where you are. And so we do have the filters up here where you can go ahead and say, okay, well, just show me a particular track number or, field name or specific crops, specific season, specific year. And when those work, they're great, but we have found to be glitchy and not perfect. So in the spreadsheet, we don't have those problems because it's not doing all the complicated computations that CAS needs to. So if you want to limit things, all you need to do is click any of these arrows and you can say, hey, just show me that one field or whatever you're trying to filter it to. So we left the common filters in place, the ones where we thought people might actually, it might stand to gain to be able to filter things to, years or seasons, certainly crops, things like that. We don't have all of the filters in place, but if there was a need, I don't know why you would ever want to I guess you could filter to I don't know, corn yields or something like that. But if it doesn't have that button, it's programmed not to have it, and we would have to reprogram it to do it, which we can certainly do. That's kind of one of the great things about this whole NMDS is that it's really open to how users use it and would like things tweaked. Since DCR owns it and maintains it, we don't have to go through the whole complicated and expensive process of going out to software contractors to make little changes like that. So by all means, let us know. But we kept these filters in place and you should definitely use them. And I'll show you how you might want to use them in a minute or how I think it makes most sense. All right, so this is your balance sheet. And so this is, I said white is user entered, but I guess I was wrong here. You actually can't enter anything on the balance sheet. So if you need a balance sheet because the CAS isn't cooperating, you're not being able to get one generated in a timely manner, or sometimes the plan's just too big and they just don't spit out, you can go ahead and get a balance sheet from here. And we have left it open. So, you have the possibility to have 2 organic source applications, 2 biosolids, and 3 commercials, as well as lime. That's a lot of rows. So if you want to go ahead and limit that a little bit, we've also left it so that you can go ahead and hide any columns that you don't want. So you just click on them and then right click and say hide. So if you don't have multiple organic applications, or let's say it's all a commercial plan, you don't have any organics, you don't have any biosolids, you can just go ahead. Again, I'm sorry, I'm going fast and this is supposed to be a tips and tricks. I click on the first column then I hold the shift button, and then I click over to the as far as I want to go ahead and limit things or all of the different columns that I want to highlight. If they're not contiguous, like if they're not one after another, you can click one column and then you can hit the control button and then you can jump around and do it that way. Once they're highlighted, you right click within any of them and you're going to have the same options. Now you can't hide if they're not continuous, like next to each other. So then you would have to kind of, peck your way through it. But again, select the columns that you don't want to see, go ahead and hit hide. And so if you didn't have biosolids and you just wanted a nice, easy to read balance sheet, let's say in this plan, it looks like, again, this is the first time I'm looking at this plan, but it looks like Steph doesn't even have any commercial applications in yet, other than one, a commercial application one, not two or three. So I could even hide those two. And now I've got what I think is a very, very useful balance sheet like this. If I printed this out and handed this to the producer or whoever needed to see a balance sheet, to my eye, and maybe it's just because I'm more used to it at this point, but I think that this is more usable than the balance sheet that CAS currently generates. Let's say I need to unhide those. I can click on one of the columns and you can just try to find the columns. Like I can navigate and scroll and I can try to click on a specific column and hit unhide. The problem is it doesn't know exactly which column you're trying to unhide. So the easiest way to do it is click to the far left, the first column that is visible, and then I'm going to hit Control Shift and I'm going to hit my right arrow button. And I'm just going to, now that highlights all of them, I'm going to hit unhide all of them. And now I've got them all visible again. So that's kind of hiding, unhiding 101. All right, moving on. I'll come back to the P assessment in a minute. So this is where you're going to change whether it's using the soil test method or the PET or the P index to assess what P strategy, mitigation strategy you're using. We'll come back to this one, but let's go ahead and actually start using the spreadsheet for what it does really well. So let's go ahead and do some commercial applications. So we programmed it to have 3 possible sets of commercial applications. So everything with 1 is color coded and has 1 in it, 2, 3. I think that's generous. We actually looked into CAS to see how most users are using, like how many applications they're doing per season. And I think, I can't remember the exact number, maybe you remember, Steph, but I want to say like 95% of all CAS plans were only using 1 application per season. And then there was a handful that were using 2. So we figured, well, let's just go ahead and put 3 in just in case to give everyone, maximum ability to do whatever they're needing to do, unless they're doing, some really intricate precision work with multiple side dresses or whatever. But for most plans, you're probably only going to be using 1, maybe 2. So by all means, again, like I'm all for trying to create as much visible space as I can. Same deal. I'm going to click on all of them. I hit Shift, then I click on the last column. I'm going to hide all of that because I'm not going to use it. So just get it out of the way. Likewise, I think this is all useful information to kind of keep a handle on as you're putting your applications in. But if you don't need to see, some people use FSA numbers and a lot of people don't. I know the farmers I worked with in my area of Virginia generally didn't use FSA numbers. So if I was writing this plan, I would just hide all of that, get rid of it so I don't need to see it. All right, then for actually applying the applications, we're going to really start using these filters now. So I'm looking through these crops really fast to find out where some examples might be. We'll use corn grain. That's a pretty common one anyway. So I'm going to filter my crops. Right now it's selecting all. I want to see all of my corn grain. So that's now, I didn't lose anything. It didn't delete any rows. All it's doing is now just showing me all of the corn seeds, any field that has corn in it for every season that the corn's in there. So you can see it spring and summer. And let's say I'm really starting to get to the nitty gritty and I'm applying nutrients. I just want to do a starter application, let's say. So I'm not going to worry about summer top dresses. So now I'm going to filter by season and I'm going to only show my spring. So now what I've done is every field that has corn in the spring for every year is showing. And let's say I only want to deal with the current year. So I'm even going to now filter it down more. Now it's just showing me the current years that are have those criteria. And now you'll see using the spreadsheet, if I was had a lot of like quick information to enter, I've taken, I don't know how many rows there were total before I filtered, but I think it was pretty large, like a couple, maybe a couple hundred. And I'm really whittled it down to just three. So this is the same thing as using these kind of glitchy quick filters up here on the nutrient applications tab in CAS, but you can see it's instantaneous. And if you need to reverse anything, there's no spinning wheel to wait for. Anything that's got this filter, I guess, highlighted symbol as opposed to just an arrow, that means I'm filtering by that column. So if I want to get out of that, I just click on it again and say, okay, I didn't mean to do that. I actually wanted to see all years because I'm using the same starter application for all years on corn. So I'll just go ahead and put something in there. So I'm going to put in a starter application. Forgive me for the agronomists on the meeting. If I don't know if that's a starter amount these days or not, but I'm just going to go with that. And now what I'm going to do, if that's uniform across all of my corn grain fields for all the years, I'm going to go ahead and band that. I'm not going to put an application note in with it. So I'm going to click the first column, then I'm going to hit that shift button and go down as far as I want to. And then I'm going to find this little box in the bottom right, and I'm going to drag that down to every field. And because everything's filtered, you can see it's kind of moving a little bit slowly, but much, much faster than CAS. Within, 5 seconds, I've just made all of those applications across all of those fields for all of that crop in all of that season for every year. So that's really handy. So that is the equivalent in CAS of doing, it's not showing right now because I've got this locked because I have the spreadsheet out, but most users probably have used the bulk applications before. They would be visible right here. You could do bulk manure applications. You can do bulk commercial applications. That is the same thing, except it's a lot faster and, to my mind anyway, a lot easier just to do it in an Excel spreadsheet rather than having to do a bunch of clicking in CAS and waiting for that wheel to spin until it can load all the information. If I make a mistake, let's say it wasn't 555, it's a spreadsheet. So now I can just go ahead and drag everything and just hit the delete button, and all of that information is taken out. So that's where I really think the spreadsheet, once you kind of get used to, it's a new format, it's new layout, but once you kind of get used to the clicking and some Excel basics here, I just think it's really fast. I've written a lot of plans with it to test and see how it performs, and I just think it's a lot faster and a lot easier than using CAS. But you just need to know how to use it right. If I was trying to do the same thing and go through and find all my cornfields, I certainly could just scroll row by row, but you can see that would be a lot more tedious to go ahead and find all the right crops in the right fields and everything. So that's why these filter buttons are there. That's a big tip. Any questions so far? No, I'm going fast and covering a lot.
Nope, it's pretty quiet, but it's recorded, which is the best because then you can go back and watch it again.
Cool. A couple other things I'll throw out while I was making those applications. If you don't, another way we wanted to speed this up, if I don't put in an application method, you can see when it highlights yellow, that means that's a required input because you have to put an application method, obviously. But if you forget to do it, it defaults to broadcast. That's the most common application method when we look through the CAS data tables. So you could actually even skip that. And then if it wasn't, if you were just putting down some nitrogen and not P or K, or, just nitrogen and K and not P, if you leave those blank, it assumes 0. And you can see that right here. Your committed value is 505, even though you just left it blank. You didn't actually write 0. You could write 0 and it would be the same thing. So those are some quick tips too to speed this along. If you don't put anything for your application method, it's going back into CAS as broadcast. All right, moving on to organic applications. So it's the same thing. So now it comes preloaded with all of your different manure sources that you entered in CAS, and it does all the calculations on nitrogen release and all of that as you start entering it. But other than that, it's the same process. So like again, if I was writing a plan as a planner, would be working with, let's say, a dairy farmer, and they say, hey, I want to make use of my, I don't know what's on here. What do we have? Some litter. Okay. I want to make use, get the max nitrogen value out of my litter on all my crop fields first. And so then I would just pick all the crops and say, all right, instead of showing me everything, let's go ahead and target the ones that have, the most nitrogen needs to make best use of that particular crop, and then just filter it here, filter it again like we did before. We'll stick with the corn example, and let's also say we want to go ahead and do sweet corn as well. So now we're filtering to corn and sweet corn. And so is there imported litter here? Maybe more litter is imported. Take a look. We go to our organic summary, we can say, yeah, the more
Yes,
litter
it's
is
imported.
actually imported. Yep. So let's say I've got imported litter, and I know I can get 2 tons an acre annually on that. And I want to go ahead and put that down every spring on my crop, on my corn, my sweet, and my green corn. So I'm going to filter down to the spring. It's going to be for the whole lifespan of the plan. And then the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and put my input in. If you don't put a method for your organics, like in the commercial, it would default to broadcast. If you don't put one in for an organic source, it's going to default to not incorporated or incorporated greater than 7 days. Again, that's the most common thing that we see in CAS. And then I would go ahead and put my application rate. And then, sorry, I'm going fast. Click on that, hold down the shift button, click as far as I want to go, find my little box, and then just drag it down. Oops, didn't drag it down all the way. And it's applying all that litter across all those fields that were filtered to those parameters. I do want to show you all one thing. This sometimes trips people up. Sometimes Excel tries to be very clever, and it's very useful sometimes, and sometimes it's not very useful. If I was doing that drag method and it sensed some kind of pattern that it was trying to establish, like I'm not sure it'll do it, but we'll see. So let's say I accident hit 2 and then 2.1 tons for those very precise litter applicators. And then I tried to drag it. It's probably going to sense a pattern and start incrementing that litter amount. Let's see what it does. No, okay. It actually just overwrote it that time. Sometimes though, what it'll do is it would say 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, etc. If you don't want it to do that, and you just want it to do a straight copy, let me do it again and I'll show you what I mean. When it does the copy, there's a little button, that box on the bottom right. If it tried to do something clever, this box would be clickable, and you right click it and really can't. Let's see if I can't get it to do it. That's better than trying to explain it. See if I can't trigger it to try to be more clever than I want it to be. This is a absurd example of stepping up your litter applications, but let's just see what it does. Nope, it just overwrote it again. All right, we'll try to find another example, but basically, if you find that it's trying to do some kind of pattern matching and you didn't want to do that, this bottom box, if you right click it, it'll give you a drop down of options, and you want to say just copy the data, not I don't know the specific wording since I don't see it in front of me, but it would give you the option to do the pattern recognition. It would say increment data or something like that. If you don't want to do that, you just click that and say just copy the data, and it will just go ahead and copy the same data over and over again. I think probably the reason I can't get it to do is because it's trying to copy some non-numerical data. Let me try it one more time and then I'll give up if it's not working still. All right, this time I'm just going to copy the numbers and not the manure source and the method. No, it's just copying it again. All right, well, bad example, but hopefully that makes sense if you've never seen that before. If you've never seen it, try to match a pattern. You can bypass it. Again, you're just going to click the bottom right box and say, just copy the data instead of trying to do whatever it's trying to do to help you out. All right, when I add the data, or when I add those applications, if I remove my filters, again, anything that shows this filter icon is now being filtered. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my big list of all my rows. You can see all of that data is just there where I put it. And then when I go to my organic summary, if I knew I had 2 tons per acre was like a target application amount on corn, but I didn't really know how many tons that was going to be total across all those acres, I can just go to the organic summary tab. I just click over and you can see by year. So in 2025, I used 323 tons of litter. So I would get a quantity. Now, what's interesting there, so again, I didn't have an agenda, so I'm finding out all the intricacies of this plan. Because it was an imported source, it was actually only available in the 2025 season. So this actually now, I thought I added it. Yeah, I added it in 2026 and 2027 as well. But the organic summary tab, because it's an imported source, it won't populate anything beyond the years that it's available. So there's a little glitch there. Maybe something to be aware of. The way that we currently have it working in CAS is if you want to go ahead and enter imported manures, I think this is right, Steph, you would have to do one. You would have to make one available for each year in the plan. Is that how it's set up?
No, the imported manures lets you do it regardless. It's biosolids that is year and season specific.
Oh, okay. So I did see some biosolids folks on this. So yeah, something to be aware of. If you wanted to make use, I don't know if it's common to do the same biosolid applications across multiple years. Maybe it's not, but if you were going to do that, you would have to add a biosolid. And the few biosolid plans that I've dealt with, which haven't been a lot, I'd usually do see them in that situation. Like it would say like 2025 biosolid or 2026 biosolid. So you guys already know all that, I'm sure. All right, back to our spreadsheet here. So the organic summary, this balance here is being updated regularly as you keep applying nutrients. And that's the big reason that we designed this is because we have real-time data. So if I went ahead, let's do a manure source that isn't, well, I'll say, okay, let's do this. We'll fix this problem here. I put it as imported manure, and let's say that was wrong. And I actually meant it was on-farm generated litter is what I meant to do. So I'm just going to go ahead and filter down to my corn again, and I'm going to change that. So you don't have to delete anything. I think I did on sweet corn too. Yeah. You actually don't have to change anything or delete anything. All I can do is go ahead and just change the source. And then here's a tip. I don't want it, I could filter and also get rid of my summer, but let's say I want to just, it's a pattern. I can see that there's a spring and then a summer, spring, then a summer. So I'm going to copy both of those down. So I'm going to click on the first row that I want copied. Then I hit Shift button and grab the second one as well. And then I grab my little box. And now it's going to copy that same pattern. So it'll keep the blank spaces as well. It'll just put litter shed instead of more litter on all the ones, or I think that's what it's going to do. And then I've changed everything. Oh, no, it did. I don't know why it's doing that. It doesn't matter. I don't really need to delete these out. The committed column is what's actually going to go back into CAS. So this was covered in one of the previous training sessions, but as a quick refresher, as you're doing things in the spreadsheet, only if it's showing here in your committed column is it actually, as it says, committed. That's what you're going to push back into CAS when you do the import. So if I left this blank, nothing's committed yet because it doesn't know what to commit. I don't have a rate yet. The second I put a rate in there, now it's actually going to go ahead. Well, I guess it needs an application method as well. Now it says, okay, this is committed. But before it does that, if it's blank, oh, and that's right too. It is going to stay committed even if I put a rate in because it's assuming, like I said, if you leave that blank, the method, it's going to assume that it's over 7 days or not incorporated. So once I put in a rate though, and you see a committed value, that's actually going into cache. So I could take the time to go ahead and delete these out, the ones that copied down for some reason. I think it's performing a little bit differently than what I'm used to because I'm in a filtered view. It normally doesn't do that. It should have just kept the pattern, but being a little bit weird just because I have it filtered. But I could delete those out or I couldn't. It doesn't matter because you can see there's nothing committed for those rows. But anyway, I then changed everything from that imported manure source to my litter shed. And now if I go back to my organic summary, you can see it's keeping a running total based on whatever inputs I put in for CAS for, the manure generation totals. It's now saying, okay, within, or this is the running total. And then this is a cool thing too, which I don't think we've covered yet. The color on this, the red highlight, means that I'm over 10% of my estimated volume for that manure source. So I'll say that again. So my production estimate here for Littershed 2025 was 68.8 tons. I've used 77 tons, which is probably just over 10% of, with rounding, of that 68.8. And so it's giving me that red highlight to as a flag of saying, okay, you're not within 10%. 10% isn't written down anywhere, but it's kind of the unofficial rule. Or Steph, correct me if I'm wrong there. I don't know if it's technically a rule, but I know when I was reviewing plans, we always kind of, gave some leniency because it's not an exact science spreading manure. We wanted to see manure allocations within 10% of what was supposed to be generated or brought in.
That actually
So
is a
that's what,
regs rule. So
oh, it is? Okay,
mm,
well, good. Then I did it right. So, um, if I went ahead and changed, let's just go ahead and back one of these down and see if I can get it to be within 10%. I'm just guessing at a number that might do it. Not yet. I'm still not quite there. Getting closer, but you can hopefully get the gist. When I get that within the 10%, yeah, there you go. So now I'm within 10%. So this is a really quick, easy tool. If you're spreading a lot of manure, it's a complicated farm, and I think it's also in place for biosolids. If you're not within that 10%, you'll see the red flag on it. The other flags, color-coded flags we have in here are the balances, and same kind of deal. If you've exceeded your nitrogen by more than 10 pounds, you're going to get a flag. It'll highlight red. The default is going to be purple. The red means you've exceeded nutrients in some way. It'll also flag if your phosphorus allocations are over what is allowed according to your current phosphorus assessment. So on this field here, the home GDF field, it's actually a 0P field right now. And I put down 104 tons of phosphorus. So actually, obviously that's not 0P. And so I'm getting a red flag there. We don't have any flags in place for potassium. But if you're over 10 pounds, and there's also 10 pounds built in on phosphorus either way. So if you're over 10 pounds, you're going to get the red flag. And so that's a quick visual. So as you're going through your plan, you can go ahead and quickly address any problems just by looking out for that color. And also, I believe I've done it on the balance sheet. I go back to my balance sheet, which is just the summary of everything I've done. Yep, same deal. You'll see, okay, so if I was writing a plan, it's really fast and easy in my mind to say, okay, did I do anything wrong in any of the fields? I can just scroll through a large plan, look for any red highlights and see what's going on there. So in this case, for the cornfield, I've exceeded my nitrogen. And for that first field, I was just over on phosphorus for this season. All right, so that kind of leads us into phosphorus. The P assessment tab is where I'm going to go ahead and manipulate this. So right now, whatever method you've chosen in CAS for your P assessment, is what comes in as your CAS P method. So if you've already run the P index, or if you've just kept it at the default soil test assessment, or if you've run the PET, that's what's currently displaying. Your CAS P assessment is what's currently in CAS. This is your soil test rating. This is the method that you have, and then this is your current assessment. So if you want to change that, you can go ahead and from this drop down, click whatever you want to change it to. So let's just run the PET on everything. So same deal, I can hit shift, I can select a couple rows and then just drag down. And now I've instantly run the PET on all of those fields. Over here is my new assessment. So this field had the P index run on it. It came in as N-based, and running the PET comes in as 0P. So maybe I want to continue using the P index on that. So I can delete out that PET, and now it's going to retain whatever came in from CAS, or I could run the P index in the spreadsheet and I could run it independently. So let's say I ran it in CAS, and as we all know, CAS can be a little bit fidgety with the P index, which I'm sure Steph will have some more to say about. Then I could run it again in the spreadsheet, and whatever I do here is going to override whatever happened in CAS. So let's say, like, I don't know, I actually had a Russell 2 number to enter, whereas before when I ran it, I didn't have that number available. I can go ahead and just enter that here and run my P index based on whatever inputs I choose to put in at this point. We have it built in. This is a tip or a trick or just something to be aware of, I guess, more. Your distance to stream and your riparian buffer width is going to default to 0 if you don't put anything in here, if you're running the P index. So make sure, if you want it to default to 0, if you want to run worst case scenario, then great. You can either just enter that or you can keep it blank. Either way, it's going to run the P index at 0 right now. And then if I want to go ahead and actually put real numbers in there, you can go ahead and do that. These light yellow ones, highlights, when I choose to run the P index on a field, you see these highlights pop up. These are all optional. If you don't enter a Russell 2, if you don't know it, then it's going to run the ERA for you automatically, which CAS does not. And then again, if you don't put anything for distance to stream or buffer width, then you're going to get defaulted to 0, so you don't have to put anything there. The bright yellow ones are mandatory inputs. And this is a crop field. And so if you read the P-Index manual, you're supposed to put inputs in for whether it's contour planted, strip cropped, terraces installed, or conservation tillage. If you don't put anything, we try to make it easy. It defaults to no for all of those. But if you have some inputs there and you want to go ahead and change those inputs, by all means, you just click over and do it real fast. If it's we don't have a pasture field in this plan, is that right? Nope. If there was a pasture field,
There's a hay pasture one.
Oh, will that work? Yeah, that'll work. No, it's just the
because it'll
pasture
default to
ground
pick one.
cover.
Yeah. Never mind.
So a hay pasture wouldn't work, but if there was a straight pasture field in here, when I clicked P index, then the mandatory field is your ground cover. You have to select whether it's, I forget the exact wording. Is it like 25 to 50%, 50 to 75% stand, whatever it is, that drop down then becomes mandatory.
75% or greater.
Yep. And if you forget to do it, then your P assessment score over here is going to say need inputs. That means you haven't completed all the data that you need to run the P index. And so if you try to import this back into CAS, it's going to reject your P index for that field because you don't have all the inputs. It's just going to retain whatever you had already coming in from CAS. So make sure you don't try to import something that isn't complete and it says need inputs. The other thing we just added, I think last week, 2 weeks ago, if I run P index and all these real fast, we actually put your score in there too, your P index score. I think Seth, our PPA permitted plan reviewer, said it was really handy as he was working with planners if they knew, what happens when you change inputs. Like, let's say your Russell, you didn't have the Russell and you had the ERA instead. So this field has a P-index score of 26. And if I don't run, I don't know what's going on with this plan stuff, but you actually have a P-index score of 0, which doesn't seem real incredibly realistic. But yeah, you
Because
can see
not
how.
every field needs it because there's a bunch of N-based fields in there. I don't
Oh,
know why
okay.
the other ones are and I did run it in the module. That might have been funking it up too.
Okay. There, and I'll say that now, you do have, in theory, the flexibility to run the p-index in CAS and in the spreadsheet, but that is, you're kind of playing with that. That's a little bit of danger right there. There's so many inputs, as we all know, with the p-index. I can't guarantee that that's all working properly right now. My recommendation would be just use the spreadsheet to run the p-index, and I think that's going to become, if you read the newsletter, did
Which
that get
is a
announced?
requirement after August 1st. Yes, that was announced in the newsletter. So after on August 1, we are shutting down the P-index in the module because it's a train wreck and going to be rejecting it here until further notice.
Yeah, I can't, I mean, I don't think it's a train wreck in here, but the advantage is we can fix things quickly in here if they come up versus in the module. So much complexity and over engineering went into creating the pay index in the module that it's not, we put so much maintenance work into it and keep sinking it time and effort into it that at some point I think we realized this was silly. We needed to cut our losses and abandon ship for a little bit until the nutrient management module rebuild, which will happen in 2 years or so. So for now, I would say just run the p-index in the spreadsheet. It runs the ERA for you automatically, so you don't even need to put in those inputs, picking your crop rotation inputs for your tillage management. It does all that on the back end for you automatically, just like Nutman 3 used to do. So it's even easier, and as you can see, it's basically instant. You just select p-index and it runs. All right. How are we doing? Any questions yet?
We did have a question about, and I was gonna kind of wrap up with this about getting Nutman files into CAS or the spreadsheet, which we can't, unfortunately. Um, but I can further elaborate on that at the end. So if there's any other things you want to tip or trick us on,
I was going
we can.
to do one more thing that
Okay.
when we've been troubleshooting with people, this is something that's come up a couple times. So I want to make sure everyone knows how to
Yeah,
do this.
absolutely.
I'm going to take, this is my original um, downloadable spreadsheet. I should have mentioned this at the beginning too. Autosave, when you open this, your autosave defaults to on. I'm personally someone that does not like it to be autosave because, especially if I'm writing a plan and I'm just kind of fooling around, I'm very good at hitting the save button. Every time I've done something that I want committed, I just have it programmed in my mind. Go ahead and hit the save button. If you're not that kind of person, you can keep autosave on and it will every time you make an input, it saves it automatically for you. So that's your preference. Me personally, I like to keep that off. So I toggle that off. I'm going to save it and close this, and I'm going to make a copy of this plan. So this isn't really spreadsheet specific. This is just file management, but you can hit Control C after I've selected the file, and then hit Control V and it will paste it. I need to find where it pasted it though, because on a split screen and sharing my screen, so I don't really know where it's putting it. There it went. Let me drag it over. All right, so by default, it's just going to call it the copy of whatever you've done there, and I'll just leave it like that for now. Let's say so this is my master, this is my copy, and let's say something went wrong and I'm not happy with all the inputs that I made, and I want to go ahead and keep some of the inputs and go back to the original with what I've done that I did like so far. So let's say I liked all of this. All I'm going to do, it's just Excel, it's a spreadsheet. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy that data. So let me actually get out of the filtered view because I don't want to copy things into the wrong rows. So let's say I wanted to keep all my lettershed applications that I had made. I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, that was row 38 through 66. I'm going to highlight all of that, and then you can either right click and hit copy, or you can hit Control C as a shortcut. So I've copied all that data. And I want to go ahead and put that into a different version of the spreadsheet for whatever reason I've messed something up. I'm going to go to my unfiltered view. So I've got both versions right now open. I just want to confirm that I'm going to put them in the right place. So I started on row 38. So these will match exactly every time. If you've copied the spreadsheet, there's no way for row numbers not to sync up exactly every time, as long as you're not on a filtered view. Make sure you're not filtered for something. But otherwise, there's nothing you can do in the spreadsheet because it's locked down that would put things out of order so that they wouldn't copy over the same exact way. So that's something to keep in mind. If you need to go ahead and copy a bunch of data, I'll just go ahead and delete it out here. So I copied it over from the spreadsheet, and now I'm going to come into just the first row and column where I want to paste that data. Fortunately, when I hit delete, it lost my copy. Let me go back to copying it again. So I'm on row 38. I hit Control C. Now I go over to the spreadsheet that I want to copy it into. Now I'm going to hit my right mouse button. Here is an important thing to be aware of in Excel. If you're not aware of this, you have different paste options. You can paste the formatting, you can paste the formulas, you can paste all kinds of different things that will make it do different weird things. I just want the values. Whatever I had copied, I just want the values. So the shortcut is Control V. So Control C was to copy, Control V is then to paste. Or I can right click there and choose the 1, 2, 3. That means the values only are going to be copied over into that spreadsheet. And you can see it instantly committed the values and made all the nutrient calculations accordingly. So this has come up a couple of times as people have been making multiple copies of or downloads from CAS. So they've, whatever reason, something went wrong and they by accident canceled the process, the import-export process. Once you cancel that, this spreadsheet will no longer be able to get back into CAS because of that unique ID that I showed earlier. The copies of the original spreadsheet, they all have the same ID and they are now not going to go back into CAS. But let's say you did a bunch of work in here and you were happy with everything, and now a couple of people called up or contacted the help desk and said, I need to download a new version of the spreadsheet. Is there any way to keep all that info or somehow get the original spreadsheet back in? There is. Just download a completely new one. If you haven't changed any inputs in CAS, it's going to download exactly the same way. It'll just have the new updated ID. And then you go to whatever tabs had the information that you wanted. So in this case, it would be the organic application tabs. And I would just copy the whole thing. And I've done this for people a couple times. I just copy everything, the blanks and all. I just copy all user inputs for that tab, hit Control C, then I go to my new download copy that has the good ID, and I just paste it right in, paste values, Control V or right click and hit the 1, 2, 3. And then your old one that is no longer able to be imported, you can just copy everything right over to your newly exported one, and you haven't lost anything. A little tricky. You got to think through it all. Like, well, what's current? What do I want to keep? What's got the good ID? But once you do it a couple times, I think this becomes pretty fast and intuitive. And I think it just might take one time of thinking you've broken it and you're in deep trouble, and then I can walk you through it, or Steph or Marie or whoever, and you'll realize, oh, it's just a spreadsheet. I can just copy those rows right over, and it's no big deal. So that was the last little tip I wanted to share, was if you get yourself into some trouble or you're creating multiple copies of a spreadsheet because you're playing out different scenarios, you have the ability, like you do with any spreadsheet, to copy and paste data.
And it's pretty break proof. Like whatever you do, whenever you download it, it's not automatically loading it back into CAS or anything like that. So until you import it, whatever you do in here, especially your first couple of plans, just kind of mess around with it. Try and break it if that makes sense, or see what you're comfortable with and what it can do. And don't be afraid, like Joe said, it's all copyable, or you can just get a new one. So don't really fear that you're going to do something wrong to it or mess up your plan if you download it and start playing with it. It's a great
Yeah, it's
experimental field because in CAS it
really
does save
simple.
things automatically, but this you can just go back and delete it and it's not going to really affect what's already being uploaded into that.
Yep, and it's really simple technology. Like when something's going wrong in CAS, I'm sure we've all been on the receiving end of that. That's usually a lot more complicated and a lengthy process to narrow it down. Just email me your spreadsheet, say this is happening. I'm not sure why. And usually pretty quickly I can figure out what's going on because it's just a spreadsheet. Yeah. And I guess that'll be the last tip I have. This was a good point. Don't forget to use the undo button. That's a very, very useful tool.
Very
If
helpful.
you've done a whole bunch of stuff and you didn't mean to, you just hit the undo and whatever, that whole paste it that I just did just became nothing, just erases it. So use that. Oh, I did mean to do it actually. Well, then put it back in with these two buttons up here if you don't know those exist. And what can happen, I'm sorry, I keep saying last thing, but the one other thing that people have done accidentally to break things is if you are trying to like drag values over, let's say I went and put in an input here, and then I dragged it into the wrong column by accident. So if I want to run the soil test on everything, normally I would just drag it down. But let's say, whoops, I slipped and I drag it now to the right. That's actually a problem because now what I've actually dragged in here potentially is any of the formatting or formulas. Actually Excel just automatically transfers over those as well. And so that's potentially a problem. So again, just hit the undo button and say, well, I didn't mean to do that. And you can undo it. Yeah, that undo button is very, very useful.
Thanks.
I think that's all. Yeah, I know that was a lot,
Yeah.
and I'm sorry that I didn't have more structure to it, but I thought we just
No,
go through a spreadsheet and highlight some things.
I think it's very helpful just how to use Excel. And even if you knew some of those tips and tricks, how to manipulate it in this specific scenario. And hey, everyone got one whole CEU now because we managed to talk for an hour, which is great because I think it's going to be very helpful. So thank you, Joe, for not only building it, but taking the time right after a holiday weekend to talk about very exciting Excel wizardry with us. We really appreciate it. Joe used to be a nutrient management planner, but now he works for the data services team. So whenever we can borrow him, we appreciate it. Last two things that I have to wrap up. If you didn't put your name and or cert number in, make sure to do that. If you cannot for some reason, because teams can be weird about that, just send me a quick email saying, hey, I was on the call and I can add you to the list. And there was a question about importing Nutman 3 files into CAS. Can't do that, even though, especially the spreadsheet looks like it. We engineered it specifically to look like Nutman, but the whole thrust of CAS is the mapping portion of it, which Nutman does not have even a little bit. So as planners put plans into the module, it is automatically mapping. Well, not automatically, you have to put in the files. It is mapping the hook codes from those mapped out acres for you to help reduce the need for activity reporting pain down the line. So that is kind of the main biggest difference between CAS and Nutman is we're actually capturing watershed data via maps and trying to prevent double planning on same fields. So while it is kind of a pain to do the initial transition, it's part of the process. But then once it's in CAS, it's there for good, and you can just keep copying it forward forever. And there's a bunch more information on the website about that. I'm going to share my screen really quick just to give a reminder of where all this goodness is. Like Joe, I have multiple screens open, so I have to actually find where I have the information. So if you go to the DCR website, or just type in DCR Virginia Nutrient Management, under the Planner Resources tab, we have here Nutrient Management Plan Writing App, which is the actual official name. of the module because the module is but one piece of the CAS overall suite. So it's a nutrient management module technically. But here we have these video tutorials where we have one on the spreadsheet demo, the one training we had specifically on the P-index next week will be here. This video will be under here as well. And then here is specific information on how to load things into and create plans in the module, as well as actual written tutorials for the NMDS, which is that spreadsheet we've been talking about. So here is a great resource. If you have any questions about the module on, I don't know, you're writing a plan on the weekend because that's your side hustle and the DCR is not answering our emails, here can be a really good place to check and see if you can get your question answered there. And with that, I don't think I have anything else to say. There were no other questions, so we really appreciate everyone's time and hope you all can stay cool in this wonderful summer we're having. If you have any questions at any time, feel free to call, email me, and I will get them answered or get them to the person who can answer them. And I see you're typing, Joe. Is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Oh, I just put my
Oh, he
email
just put his
down
email.
for those.
Yep.
Yeah, if you have like a specific spreadsheet issue, problem, question, feel free, you can just email it to me. Include a copy of it is always useful if it's something that you're having an issue with, and I can take a look at it really quickly.
Thanks, everyone. Hope you have a great rest of your afternoon.